Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Melissa and I'm always here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday, and I talk about true crime. I also talk about different topics. I uploaded this video like a couple of minutes ago. Figured out I didn't let the whole video upload to my laptop, so I had to redo this video. So with that being said, once again, my name is Melissa, and if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe if you love true crime and hit that bell so you can be notified. Friday I dedicate my channel to talking about missing kids. Today we have a new case and we're going to talk about a doctor who killed, who I am confused because he had a normal childhood. So I don't know what happened from his childhood to his adulthood that made him make the decision he's made. So yeah, so when y'all hear the story, y'all let me know in the comments below and let me know what y'all think about it and what made him, wanting to do what he did. I like to start my channel with poems, so I'm gonna have a poem of the day. I'm starting to learn that being broken and alone is sometimes is the best place to be, because what happens is you start to realize that you really aren't alone. You're just not dependent on the person you were supposed to depend on the whole time. So that is the poem of today. So let's go ahead and start with this new story that I have for y'all today. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're talking about Michael Swanog. Joseph Michael Swanog, born October 21st, 1954, is an American serial killer and former physician who estimates to have been involved in as many as 60 fatal poisons of patients and colleagues. Although he admitted to accused only for 4 deaths, he was sentenced in 2000 to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, and is serving his sentence at the ADX Florence. Michael Swanog was born on Tacoma, Washington, and raised in Kinston, Illinois. The middle child of Mike Merlier and John Virgo Swanog. Swanog's father was a career United States Army officer who served in a Vietnam War, was listed in Who in Government in 1972 and 73, and became an alcoholic. Upon his return from the Vietnam, the latter Swanog became depressed and was divorced by Merlier. Growing up, Swanog saw a little of his father, and as a result was closer to his mother. He was valedictorian of his 1972 Quincy Catholic Boys High School class. During high school, he played clarinet in the band. Swanog served in the Marine Corps, graduating from recruiting training at a Marine Corps recruiter docked in San Diego. He received a normal discharge in 1980, and he saw no action overseas during his service. But his training in the Marines left him with a commitment to seek physical exercise. When not studying, he was frequently seen jogging or performing cathlons on the Quincy University campus, and he was known to perform push-ups as a form of self-punishment when criticized by instructor. Swanog graduated from Quincy cum laude and was given the American Chemical Social Award. Following his graduation, Swanog went to medical school at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. Swanog displayed troubling behavior during his time at a CIU. Although he was a brilliant student, he preferred to work as an ambulance attendant rather than grade his studies. A fascination with dying patients was absurd during this time. Barely noticed at the time, many of Swanog's assisting patients ended up coding or suffering life-threatening emergency, with at least 5 of them dying. Swanog lacked digital approach to his studies caught up with him a month before he was due to graduate. When it was discovered that he had fake checkups during his OBG rotation, some of his fellow students had suspected he had been faking checkups as early as his 2nd year. But this was the first time he had been caught red-handed. He was nearly expelled, but was allowed to remain when one member of the community voted to give him a second chance. At the time, anonymous voters were required for a student to be dismissed. Even earlier, several students and faculty members had raised a concern about Swanog's competence to practice medicine. Eventually, the school allowed him to graduate 1 year after his entering classmates, and conditioned that he would repeat the OBG rotation and complete several assignments and other specialists. So now we're going to the timeline of the murders. Despite the very poor evaluation in his dean's letter from CIU, Swan gained a surgical internship at Ohio State University Medical Center in 1983 to be followed by a resident in neurosurgery while he worked in Rose Hall at OSU. Nurse noticed that apparently healthy patients began dying mysteriously, with the alarming frequency each time Swan had been in the floor enter. One nurse caught him injecting some medicine into a patient who later became strangely ill. The nurse reported their concern to administrator, but were met with captions of paranoia. Swan was cleared by a cursory investigation in 1984. However, his work had been so struggling that OSU pulled his resident offer after his internship ended in June. Later, he emerged that OSU officials feared that Swan would sue if he were fired without cause, and resolved to quickly push him out of the hospital as soon as possible after his membership ended. In July 1984, Swan returned to Quincy and began working as an emergency medical technician with the Adams County Ambulance Corps, even though he had been fired from an ambulance service in Springfield for making a heart patient drive to the hospital. Soon, many of the paramedics on staff began noticing that whenever Swan prepared the coffee or brought any food in, server of any usual became violently ill, with no apparent cause. In October of the year, Swan was arrested by Quincy Police Department after arresting another patient were found in his possession. On August 23, 1985, Swan was convicted of aggravated battery for possession co-workers. He was sentenced to 5-year imprisonment. Swan's conviction led to recommendations at the OCU. A scathing review by law school dean James Meeks concluded that the hospital should have called it in the police and also revealed several glaring shortcomings in the intentional investigation of Swan. Nevertheless, it was another decade before OSU formally conceded it should have called inside and outside investigation. Prosecutor in Franklin County, home to Columbia's, also considered bringing charges of murder and attempted murder against Swan, but decided against it for lack of physical evidence. In 1989, Swan, now released from prison, found work as a counselor at the State Career Development Center in Newport News, Virginia. He was forced out after being caught working on his scrapbook of discharges on work time. Swan then found a job at a labor technical for IT Coal in Newport News, now of Virgin Energy, a division of CITA Legacies. During his time there, the service employees sought medical attention with complaints of prednisone and increasing stomach pains. Around this time, Swan met Christian Lee Kinney, a nurse at Riverside Hospital. The couple fell in love and planned to marry once they got settled. He was employed until 1991, when he resigned his position to seek out a new position as a doctor. In 1991, Swan legally changed his name to Daniel J. Adams and tried to apply for a visiting program at Ohio Valley Medical Center in Wheeling, West Virginia. In July 1992, he began working at Stanford USD Medical Center, Osceola Falls, South Dakota. In both cases, Swan forged several legal documents that he used to re-establish himself as a prestigious and respected member of the social. He forged a fact sheet from the Louisiana Department of Corrections that falsified his criminal records, stating that he had been convicted of misdemeanor for getting into first fight with a co-worker and received 6 months in prison, rather than the 5 years for felony poison that he served. Most states will not grant medical license to a violent felony, consider such a conviction to be evidence of non-professional conduct. He forged a registration of civil rights letter from Virginia Governor Gerald Lee Bills, falsely stating that Bills had decided to restore Swan's right to vote and serve in on a jury based on reports from friends and colleagues that he had committed no further crimes after his misdemeanor and was leading an exemplary lifestyle. Swan established a sterling reputation as Swanog Valley, but made the mistake of attending to join the American Medical Association. The AMA did a more thorough background check than Stanford that found about the poison conviction. That Thanksgiving Day, the Discovery Channel aired an episode of Justice Files that included a segment on Swan, amid that the AMA report and calls from fighting colleagues. Stanford fired Swan. Currently went back to Virginia soon afterward. After suffering from violent migraines after she left Swan, the headache stopped. The MA temporarily lost track of Swan, who managed to find a place in physiology residence program at the Storing Brook University School of Medical in New York. His first rotation was in the International Medicine Department at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Northport, New York. Once again, his patients began dying for unexplained reasons. For months later, Kinney committed suicide, and a resin was found in her body at the time of her death. Kinney's mother, Sharon Cooper, was horrified to find out that the person with Swan history could be allowed to participate in medicine. She contacted a friend of Kinney who was a nurse at Stanford, who in turn alerted Stanford Dean Robert Talley to Swan's whereabouts. Talley telephoned Jordan Koob, the dean, at a Stormy book under intensive questioning from the head of Stern's book physical department, Alan Miller. Swan admitted he had lied about his poisons conviction in Illinois. He was immediately fired. The public outcry resulted in Collin and Miller being forced to resign before the end of the year. Before he resigned, Colin sent a warning about Swan to all 125 medical schools and all 1,000 hospitals across the USA, effectively blacklisting Swan from getting medical residence at any American institution. Since the last Swan incident took place at a Veteran Affairs faculty, federal authorities got involved. Swan dropped out of the site until mid-1994 when the Federal Bureau of Investigation found out he was living in Atlanta and working as a chemist in a computer equipment company, Westwater faculty. Soon after the FBI alerted the company, Swan was fired for lying on his job application. The FBI obtained a warrant charging Swan with using federal credits to gain entry to the Veterans Affairs Hospital. By that time, Swan had fled the country. In November of 1994. He settled in Zambia and used forged documents to obtain a job at Luther Mission Hospital in the center of the country. Again, his patients been dying mysteriously as a result of suspicion of the medical director there. Dr. Siri Swan was suspended because of the failure of perform adequate autopsy. No firm conclusion could be drawn. During his suspicion, Swan hired lawyer David Cole to enable him to return to clinic practice. He also appealed to the authorities at Millipore Hospital, Ballyhoo, to allow him in the interim to continue working voluntarily there. However, this was opposed by Alder Bold Machin, a surgery resident who had often found him snooping around mysteriously in the wards and in the intensive care unit. Even when not on call, he had suspected that the sudden deaths of some patients were due to Swan, but I had no proof of this stage. At this time, Swan rented in a room in Ballyhoo from a widow woman and who subsequently became very sick after a meal she had prepared for herself and a friend. The woman consulted a local surgeon, Michael Curran, who suspected arson, poison, and produced her to send air sample for forensic analysis to Prairie, South Africa. These clippings confirmed toxic levels of arson in the air. The lab report were passed by in the Zambia Republic Police Criminal Investigation Department. Though the end report to the FBI, who securely visited some to interview Cotton and the pathologist in Balo suffering math. In the meantime, Swan has sensed that he then net was closing in on him. He crossed the border to Zambia and subsequently to Namibia, where he found temporary medical work. He was charged and abstained with poison in March of 1997. He applied for a job at the World Hospital in Dar, Saudi Arabia, using a false resume. While all this was happening, Tom Verley, chief investigator for the Office Inspector General at the Department of Veteran Affairs, consulted with Charles Thomas, a friendship a forced physical because of her considerable clinical experience. Tom Thompson was able to review documents and evidence and give a criminal profile of Swan along with her absence of why he had committed such crimes. Bailey was called by the FBI discussing holding Swan. He called Richard Thompson, who was stationed in the DA Manhattan field office, to discuss his case. Thompson's conviction focused on Swan lying in his government application to work at the VA for his prescribed narcotic medications. There was enough evidence for Immigration and Naturalization Service agents to arrest Swan in June of 1997 in a layover of Chicago O'Hare International Airport on his way to Saudi Arabia. Faced with the hard evidence of his fraudulent activities and the possibility of the extended inquiry into his time in Serbia, Swan pleaded guilty to defrauding the government in March of 1993, and in July 1998 he was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. The sentence judge ordered that Swan not to be allowed to prepare or deliver food or have any involvement in preparing and distributing drugs. Although the FBI, the EVA, and prosecutor for Eastern District of New York were conceived Swan was a serial killer, they knew it would be difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. They also knew that they had a limited amount of time to amass that proof. Federal inmates must serve at least 85% of their sentence before being eligible for time off with good behavior, meaning that they likely had only 3 years to prove Swan was indeed a murderer. They further that if they could not find enough evidence to convict Swan, he was likely to kill again. The government used this time to amass Dorsey of Swan's crimes. As part of that investigation, prosecutor examined the bodies of 3 patients and found poison chemicals in them. They also found evidence that Swan paralyzed patient Bernie Harris with an infection of what was supposedly a sensitive. The sensitive caused him to lapse into a coma, and Harris died on November 9, 1983. Additional prosecutors found evidence that Swan lied about the death of Cynthia Ann McGee, a patient he treated during his internship at OCU. Swan claimed she suffered heart failure. He had killed her by giving her a plasmid infection that stopped her heart. On July 11, 2000, less than a week before he was due to be released from prison on fraud charges, federal prosecutor on Long Island filed a criminal complaint charging Swan with 3 counts of murder, 1 count of assaulted, and 1 count of each of false statement, mail fraud, and a conspiracy to commit wire fraud. At the same time, Serbian authorities charged him with poisoning 7 patients, 5 of them who died a week before the indictment was handed up. FBI agents interviewed Swan in prison. They told him that on the day he was due to be released, he would be extradited to Serbia to face charges of murder, attempted murder, knowing that he will likely face the death penalty for his crime. Serbia, Swan began talks for a plea agreement. Eventually, a prosecutor agreed to take the death penalty and extension off the table in return for Swan accepting a sentence of life in prison without parole. Swan was formally indicted on July 17, 2000 and pleaded not guilty. On September 6, he pleaded guilty to the 3 murder counts as well as counts of wire fraud and mail fraud before Judge Jacob Misher. He has not done so. He faced the possibility of death penalty in both countries. At this sentencing hearing, Swan admitted to causing 3 murders, lying about his role in causing the 4th death, and lying about his 1985 conviction. Prosecutor read legal pages from Swan's notebook describing the joy he felt doing his crimes. Judge Misher sentenced Swan to 3 consecutive terms of life without parole. He is incarcerated at the ADC Florence. He was sent to the ADC at his own request. He had been stabbed by another inmate while serving time for lying to the VA and feared he would be attacked again if he were placed in general population. In this book, Blind Eye Quincy negative James B. Swore estimate that counting the suspicious death at CIU personal evidence links Swan to 35 suspicious deaths. The FBI believes he may be responsible for as many as 60 deaths, which would make him one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. relate changes his murder method. With no patients such as his co-workers at the emergency commero service, he used passion, usually arranging slipping them in food and beverage. With patients, he sometimes used poison as well, but usually he administered an overdose of whichever drug the patient had been prescribed or wrote a necessary prescription for the dangerous drug. And that is the story of Michael Swan. Guys, if you please, I don't understand. Like, I really do not understand where did his life go so wrong for him to end up killing these many people. Like, he was close to his mom. Yeah, he didn't see a lot about his dad, but killing that many people, y'all, that's crazy. Like, what happened? Like, what happened to his life for him to just like, I just want to know. Like, excuse me, sir. Like, what happened to you, sir? You were a smart person. You graduated. You had a great childhood. I mean, yeah, your dad wasn't in your life, but I mean, that still doesn't make any excuse. That's just crazy, y'all. If you like, when I was searching this story, I really thought I was gonna hear something about childhood or something, but he had a normal childhood. So that's crazy. So guys, that is it. So next Wednesday I'm gonna be doing couple killers. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about that, and I will see you on Friday with the new missing child case. Yeah, have a great day.